Today, I have a special treat for you because we have a special guest teacher. Jennifer from J Forest English is going to join me, and we have created a masterclass to help you supercharge your vocabulary. Welcome, Jennifer.
It's great to be here, Wes. Today, you're going to expand your vocabulary with phrases you can use in casual conversations to sound fluent and natural. You'll learn important collocations, common phrasal verbs, and other useful phrases.
Let's get started. And first, Jennifer is going to teach you 15 useful collocations that you can definitely use when you're talking to friends, family members, colleagues, really anyone. So let's begin.
Let's do something fun. You'll learn these collocations by completing a quiz. You'll see a sentence on the screen with a blank, and you need to choose the correct word in 5 seconds. After, you'll learn the correct collocation, see an example sentence, and listen to natives using the collocation in real speech. Are you ready? Question 1. He promised he wouldn't lie, but he decided to his promise. The correct answer is B. To break a promise. This means to fail to do what one has promised to do. 5 years ago, I promised to post a new English lesson every week on my YouTube channel, and I haven't broken that promise. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
If I break a promise, I have done something wrong, even if the consequences of breaking the promise are slightly better than the consequences of keeping the promise.
You break a promise with God, you're sinning.
And we'll break a promise. It doesn't really matter.
Question 2. A great handshake can leave a impression. The correct answer is A. A lasting impression. This is an effect, feeling, or memory that remains in one's mind for a long time. So hopefully, after this lesson, you might say, this lesson left a lasting impression on me, which means you remember all these new collocations, the pronunciation, and everything you've learned. And if you enjoy this lesson and you want to have me as your English teacher in addition to Wes, then make sure you subscribe to my channel, J Forest English, where, like I said, I post new lessons just like this to help you become fluent every single week. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
And the thing that left a long-lasting impression on me was how the people I met in South Africa could envision a better future for themselves and their country.
Now that's honesty and integrity, and it's also why Faye's performances left such a lasting impression.
A simple act of kindness can make a lasting impression and make a huge difference in a person's life.
Question 3. She has a workload this month and needs extra help. The correct answer is C, a heavy workload. I hear a lot of students say a big workload, but the correct collocation is heavy, a heavy workload. And of course, this is a large amount of work. You might say it's hard to study English because of my heavy workload. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
How did she juggle all that heavy workload and be president of the sorority?
The number one hindrance to good teaching is heavy workload.
It's definitely been a pretty heavy workload.
Question 4. After finishing the project, she finally has a workload. The correct answer is C. The opposite of heavy, which means big, is light, which means a small amount of work. So hopefully you say, now that I have a light workload, I can watch all your lessons. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
The workload was so light to do compositor-based operations compared to doing layout and paint that we can now fit it comfortably inside the 60 frames a second budget.
To lighten your workload.
Question 5, to succeed, you need to be proactive and initiative. The correct answer is A, and take initiative. If you take initiative, it means you're the first to take action to achieve a goal or to solve a problem. For example, he took initiative to find a speaking partner, and that's exactly what you need to do. There are people everywhere who want to practice speaking, but you need to take initiative to find one. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Who are going to take initiative, not just do the minimum daily requirement.
People expect you to do things on your own here. They expect you to take initiative.
They're thinking, that person doesn't take initiative. I guess they're not really a leader.
How are you doing so far with this quiz? Question 6, the campaign started slow, but began to momentum. The correct answer is B, to gain momentum. This means to progress or move forward at an increasing pace. As my English fluency and confidence grew, I gained momentum in my career. So your success in your career increased at a faster and faster pace. That's what fluent English can help you accomplish. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Now, as SPACs gain momentum, more blue-chip institutions and veteran investors are buying in.
Slowly but surely, we began to gain momentum.
We gained momentum by using the cupcakes for this documentary, which was one of the clips that I showed earlier.
Question 7, her speech had an impact on everyone in the room. The correct answer is C, a profound impact. This means a very significant or deep impact. You might say, my childhood teacher had a profound impact on my English skills. You still remember those important lessons from your teacher today. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Words are that powerful. They not only affect your interior psychology and your identity, they have a profound impact on the world around you.
It's something so simple and yet has such a profound impact.
So you don't have to know someone well to have a profound impact on them.
Question 8, in order to pass the inspection, our products need to standards. The correct answer is B, to meet standards. If you meet a standard, this means you reach the expected level of quality or requirements. This is often used with products or services. All products must meet safety standards before being sold. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
How often do judges not meet standards?
So we're going to close places that don't meet standards and which are harmful to people.
They don't have to meet standards, and that is very, very dangerous.
Question 9, the proposal was accepted by a majority of the team. The correct answer is A, an overwhelming majority. This means a very large percentage or proportion. There isn't a specific number, but I would personally say it would be 75% or more to be considered an overwhelming majority. Maybe an overwhelming majority of students, 75% or more, prefer learning English online. What do you think? Let's listen to some real-world examples.
The overwhelming majority, they work really hard doing really important stuff.
And the overwhelming majority said no.
And many Nebraskans, I believe, an overwhelming majority, believe the death penalty is a part of that public safety focus, of which I firmly believe in.
Question 10, we had a discussion about the project challenges. The correct answer is C. A frank discussion is one that is open, honest, and straightforward. For example, we need to have a frank discussion about the client's expectations. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Having frank, detailed, and honest discussions on how you'll handle joint versus solo finances will guarantee that there won't be any surprises once you're married.
And I thought it was a good and useful and frank discussion.
And so our focus is on having a frank discussion, raising issues where we have concerns, and of course looking for ways and places where we can work together.
You're doing a great job. Think of everything that you're learning. Let's keep going. Question 11. He decided to responsibility for his actions. The correct answer is A, to take responsibility. This is when you accept responsibility. For example, you could be frank, you could be honest and open and straightforward, to be frank, and say, I take full responsibility for the project delay. This is a very mature thing to do. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Training Afghan forces to take responsibility for their own security.
He said, someone, you, has to take responsibility.
We must take responsibility now for our role in this crisis, a crisis in which the origins can be traced back to the onset of the Anthropocene era.
Question 12, the board will approval for the new policy next week. The correct answer is B, to grant approval. This means to officially agree to or allow something. The team needs to wait until the director grants approval. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
The Queen must grant her approval before the gown can even start being made.
He added the ministry will quickly grant approval if companies apply for an extension in working hours to expand domestic production.
Question 13. Both parties finally reached an agreement. The correct answer is A, a mutual agreement. This is one that all people involved, there could be 2 people, 5 people, or 12 people, but all people involved accept. We reached a mutual agreement to reduce the budget. Everyone agreed, yes, let's reduce the budget. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
It's a mutual agreement in a group that you will put the welfare of the group, you will put the safety of everyone in the group above your own.
And we talked about issues by mutual agreement. That practice helped me a great deal because I came to understand Ronald Reagan.
This mutual agreement between the parent and child was a really nice cooperative strategy, but somehow it just wasn't working for them.
Question 14. The project had an influence on the younger team members. The correct answer is B. A positive influence is, of course, one that leads to improvements. You might say learning English has had a positive influence on my life because it has helped you gain momentum. Remember that one, to gain momentum. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
She is a role model, a positive influence, and has a powerful ability to motivate others.
We're going to be a positive influence to everybody around us.
We're talking about being a positive influence in their communities, making a difference.
Question 15. By introducing this new feature, the company gained an advantage. The correct answer is B, competitive. The adjective form. A competitive advantage is something that allows someone, a person, or even a company, a team, to outperform, to perform better than others. Again, you might say being fluent in English gives you a competitive advantage in today's global world. Do you agree with that? Let's listen to some real-world examples.
It's going to be a competitive advantage for us. And one of the things we decided was, how can we reinvent the office?
Leverage your sources of unfair competitive advantage, but make sure you reinvent yourself before disruption leaves you with no other option but to do so.
What really is a company's most competitive advantage? It's people. We know this.
Amazing job learning these important collocations. Share your score in the comments. And now Wes is going to teach you 15 important phrases with make, do, and have.
Let's make the most of it and keep building your vocabulary. And we'll begin with the phrase that I just mentioned, to make the most of. This means to take full advantage of something because it's not going to last long. So generally this refers to some sort of opportunity. Maybe it's a beautiful day outside and I say, well, you should make the most of it. Or perhaps you're in New York City for only a couple of days and you want to make the most of it. You want to build your vocabulary, so you're watching this video. You should make the most of it. Hit the like button, write to me in the comments. It's not going to last forever.
We'll show your people how to use this land properly, how to make the most of it.
On a ticking clock. Make the most of it.
Well, we have a few minutes right now. Let's make the most of it.
Then there's make do with. This means to use what is available, although it's really not enough or even what you wanted. So there are many situations that you can use this phrase. Maybe you need a knife, but only a fork is available, and you say, yes, I'll make do with the fork. Or perhaps you're trying to go somewhere, and you can get there faster by car, but a bike is the only thing that's available, and you say, I'll make do with it. Here are some news headlines so you can get a better idea as to how this phrase is used in context. We need 2 pools in this town. Orangeville residents make do with Tony Rose pool closure. The gender pension gap. Even after work ends, women must make do with less. As Louisiana schools seek to prevent school shootings, some make do with limited resources. Let's have a look at some more examples.
I'll just make do with no assistance.
No, don't just give up. Maybe you haven't found the right person yet.
They're not going to go back to the way they were. You make do with what's left.
I can't find any baking soda. I'm going to have to make do with Colgate.
Then we have to make amends. This means to do something to show that you're sorry for your bad behavior in the past. So in this case, it is a little similar to make up. Let's make up, let's make amends. The difference is that when you're going to use make amends, it really means that you are actually doing or offering something to show that you're sorry. So if my wife is upset with me, I may buy her some flowers in order to make amends. I thought this was a fun little saying, make amends real quick. Karma does not joke around. And yes, I do think it's always better to make amends, even though it doesn't always happen.
I've been making amends.
You weren't amending, you were avenging.
Step 9 of Narcotics Anonymous. I'm here to make amends.
So I've been going through the 12 steps.
What are you up to now? Step 9?
Yeah, making amends.
I seek to make amends, to pay for what I've done.
Make a point of. This is used to emphasize something or highlight a situation. So one thing I want you to keep in mind is that you're often going to follow this phrase with a gerund. I could say, I make a point of calling my parents once a week. And I just maybe want to highlight that. Or to give you a business example, maybe I could say, we need to make a point of offering our employees professional development opportunities. And you just want to emphasize that this is important.
You know I make a point of never interfering in your personal affairs.
The folk who thrive around here make a point of easing their neighbor's burden.
Seems somewhat familiar. Have I threatened you before?
I make a point of avoiding familiarity with pirates.
Then we have the phrase make peace with. And you can make peace with someone or make peace with something. And they really have 2 different meanings. So when you make peace with someone, it means that you need to stop fighting or disagreeing with someone and start working and living happily together. So let's say that 2 people are fighting or arguing, and I say, you need to make peace with each other.
Reach out
and take it. Make peace with the Lannisters.
Make peace with your sister, and then make peace with yourself.
Now, when you make peace with something, that means that you start to accept something that was worrying or annoying you. And I could say, well, I made peace with the fact that I would never become a professional basketball player, even though that's what I wanted when I was younger, but I made peace with that a long time ago.
It's not going to change. Just make peace with it.
You know, I've had to make peace with the fact that probably never going to get genuine accountability.
Let's continue with more phrases, but this time I want to teach you some useful phrases with the verb do. And we will start with the phrase do a number on. This means to harm someone or something, and it really does have a negative connotation. Perhaps I say that, well, I went in for a cleaning, but the dentist did a number on my teeth. And in that case, I'm referring to physical harm. But you could also use this when referring to any type of harm, like psychological harm. Perhaps I say, after getting out of the relationship, she did not trust anyone. Her ex really did a number on her. Here are some more examples.
Boy, did your mother do a number on you.
I haven't worn a bathing suit in public, like, ever.
Carissa really did a number on you, huh?
This is more than just a one-night stand. This lady's gonna do a number on you, mate. I appreciate the concern.
Next is the phrase to do one's part. And this means to do what one is responsible for doing or is able to do. So when I was younger, I was supposed to help clean around the home, and sometimes my parents didn't think that I was doing that, and they would tell me, "You're not doing your part." When it comes to protecting the environment, I like to think that I'm trying to do my part, and that's also why I thought this was a funny little joke. I'm doing my part to conserve water by drinking wine instead.
Trust me, we literally have no extra money. So do your part. Sign your time card.
He will not know. Just do your part.
As you wish.
9 million socially conscious and unified citizens all just stepping up and doing their part.
To do your own thing. I really like this phrase because it means that you're going to do what you want without worrying what anyone else thinks of you. So I think it has a positive connotation, and I would encourage you to do your own thing. Don't worry what others think. I know I am going to do my own thing, and I'm going to continue doing my own thing, so you should also do your own thing. And I'm just going to keep saying that phrase, do your own thing.
I'm not in Hootie and the Blowfish anymore, y'all. Doing my own thing.
Just do your own thing. Get your own life.
Yeah, I mean, do your own thing. Comfortable with yourself.
No, thank you. I'm doing my own thing this year.
Then we have the phrase, do your best. This is a great phrase because it's so common, and it just means to make the greatest effort that you possibly can. And you would often use this to encourage someone. I could say, I want you to study hard and do your best on the exam. Or even though the team lost, everyone did their best.
Do your best. That's all anybody can ask for.
I can do it. Just do your best.
Now go do your best. It's not too late for you to become a person of substance, Russell. Please get my son home safely.
So we just talked about do your best. Now I want to talk about do your worst. You would think that these phrases are exact opposites because of best and worst, but not really. If you tell someone do your worst, it just means to do the most unpleasant or harmful thing that you can. So we're not talking about effort, like in do your best. We're talking about harm. So you may often use this when there's some sort of confrontation or competition. Perhaps someone is telling you that they're going to destroy your reputation, and you say, I'm not afraid of you, do your worst. And you're really challenging someone. Do your worst.
All right, Monday. Do your worst.
I've lost track of the number of times I've been killed, so go ahead. Do your worst.
So if you need to do your worst, do your worst. You've got the address of the hotel. I'll be here waiting.
I am going to do my part and continue teaching you some useful phrases, but this time with the verb have. And the first phrase that I want to teach you is to have a one-track mind. This means to think about one particular thing and nothing else. Now, sometimes you may hear people use this phrase as more of a sexual innuendo, suggesting that a guy has a one-track mind and is only thinking about sex. But that's not always the case, and to give you some more context, here are some news headlines. You have a one-track mind, which is why multitasking is sabotaging your productivity. Christophe Lemaitre, and maybe I'm mispronouncing the name, this person is a French sprinter, and they say, at the start lineup, you have a one-track mind. And finally, you don't have to have a one-track mind to study law. Now let's look at some video examples using this phrase.
Oh, and then games?
You know something? You have a one-track mind.
I don't care, just so long as it takes me where I want to go.
I have a one-track mind, don't I? My one-track mind is telling me that I'm hungry.
No.
Why not?
Because my ex-girlfriend's getting married.
Jesus, you got a one-track mind. It's always Caitlin, Caitlin, Caitlin.
Next is have an in with. This means to establish a connection with someone in a position of authority. And often I think this phrase is kind of related to networking. Maybe you try to meet someone, especially someone in a position of authority. You try to establish a connection so that perhaps in the future you have an in with this person. And it doesn't have to be someone with immense power. It could just be a regular person who, perhaps because of their job, they have power in specific situations. I could say, I'll be able to get us into the concert because I have an in with the security guard. He's an old friend from high school. Here's some more examples.
Maybe have an in with a big client that we could get our foot in the door.
I have an in with the manager. I delivered his baby.
And even better, I have an in with the owner. Oh yeah, we work together.
Then there's the phrase to have mixed feelings. This is another common phrase, and it's used to say that you feel pleased and not pleased at the same time. Perhaps I ask you, what do you think about the new employee policy? And you say, I have mixed feelings about it. I thought this was a fun example because there's a popular slogan, I love New York. You see it on t-shirts with a heart, but I think maybe this t-shirt is a little more accurate. I have mixed feelings about New York. Let's have a look at some more examples.
I have mixed feelings about being a parent.
I have mixed feelings about doing interviews.
I have mixed feelings, honestly.
About Christmas? How's that possible?
We share the same blood, the same mixed feelings towards Bart.
To have a presence of mind, and really you would have a presence of mind to do something. This refers to the ability to make good decisions and react quickly and calmly in a difficult situation or an emergency. It's another way of saying that you were able to think quickly and make a good decision. When the fire started, she had the presence of mind to grab the fire extinguisher. Now, I always like to inspire you, so here are some inspirational quotes using this phrase. Presence of mind in all things I counsel. Be aware of thyself before all else. It's very deep. Most important was to remain focused and always have a presence of mind. I hope that you have the presence of mind to write to me in the comments. It's not necessarily an emergency, but a good decision.
At least have the presence of mind to act civilized.
Usually when someone has the presence of mind to ask themselves if they're going crazy, it suggests they're not.
If I had lost my temper, would I have had the presence of mind to leave my card and my insurance information?
Then there's to have your hands tied. This is used to say that someone is unable to act freely because something, like a law or rule, prevents it. Let's say that you would like my help and I would like to help you, but for some reason I can't. I might say, sorry, my hands are tied. Here are some more news headlines so you can get a better feel as to how this phrase is used in context. Fast food is targeting youths, but local leaders have their hands tied. Border Patrol agents have their hands tied. Priest flees country with teen Valentine, but police may have their hands tied. Let's have a look at some video examples.
Totally disregard that last voicemail because you obviously have your hands tied. Good luck.
Since his death, my hands have been tied. But I believe the universe has given us a gift.
You can't reward her for that.
My hands are tied.
So now Jennifer is going to teach you 15 common phrasal verbs, which is incredibly helpful because we use phrasal verbs all the time in casual conversation.
Remember that phrasal verbs have multiple meanings depending on context. So I'll show you the phrasal verb and then I'll give you an example sentence so you can see how that phrasal verb is being used. Our first phrasal verb, pull off. I know the team can pull it off. Pull off. Do you know this one? In this context, to pull off means to succeed in doing something difficult or unexpected. For example, getting a high mark on your IELTS is challenging, but I know you'll pull it off. So notice here, I know you'll pull it off. Here, it means I know you'll succeed at getting a high mark on your IELTS. How about this one? If you have a great teacher, I know I'll pull it off. Maybe that's something you would say. I know I'll pull it off. I will be successful if I have a great teacher. And I hope I'm that great teacher for you. If you agree with that, put that's right, I'll pull it off. With Jennifer's help, put that's right in the comments. Now let's listen to some real world examples using this phrasal verb.
Is it something you really managed to pull off, or does the Middle East really still have us kind of sucked in?
So, how did Ukraine pull off such a stunning attack?
It requires a bit of confidence to pull off.
Our next phrasal verb, take off. Sarah's online store really took off. Do you know what this means? Take off. This means to become successful or popular. For example, my YouTube channel didn't take off at first. It wasn't successful or popular at first, but I was persistent and consistent, and eventually it took off. Eventually it became successful. I could also say, and eventually I pulled it off. I pulled it off. And in this case, it represents creating and growing a successful YouTube channel. Or I could say to you, if you're consistent, your English fluency and confidence will take off. Do you agree with that? Well, put that's right, put that's right in the comments. Now let's listen to some real world examples using this phrasal verb.
Just at the point where your career is starting to take off, you're taking on seniority.
After the trial, she was able to move away to Florence, and that's where we really see her career kind of take off.
But once you look at that 10-year mark and beyond, that's where things really start to take off.
Next, put off. She put off scheduling her IELTS. Do you know what put off means? This means to delay or postpone doing something. She put off scheduling her IELTS until she mastered phrasal verbs. Now this means she'll schedule her IELTS once she masters phrasal verbs. You might say, let's put off the meeting, let's delay the meeting until after the long weekend. Or your husband or roommate might ask you, are we still cleaning out the garage this weekend? And you can say, let's put it off until winter. Let's delay it until winter. Let's listen to some real world examples.
Do you put off writing a paper until the last minute?
Just an idea being put off for a better time that never came.
20s, and I think it's such a waste when people just put off their vacation or travel plans.
Next, turn around. How did you turn around your online store? Do you know what this means? To turn around, this means to take a business plan or system from not successful to successful. For example, the new manager turned the marketing department around. So to turn something around, to take the marketing department from not successful to successful. Or she turned around her speaking skills by practicing speaking every day. And you can add to this and say her excellent communication skills helped her career take off, become successful. Let's listen to some real world examples.
I'm hoping we can turn it around.
Of accommodation that has turned the business, turned it around.
Our economy in peril. We turned it around.
Our next phrasal verb, call off. Do you know why the meeting was called off? Do you know what this means? To call off, this means to cancel something that was planned or scheduled. For example, The company had to call off the conference, cancel the conference because of the hurricane. Now let's compare this sentence to one with put off. Remember, put off means delay. The company had to put off the conference because of the hurricane. Do you know the difference between these two sentences? In the first example with call off, the conference will not happen. It is canceled. But in the second example with put off, the conference will happen, but at a later date. Or you could say she called off her birthday party when she got sick. She canceled it. She didn't put it off, she called it off. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
As violence, they began to receive threats to call off their events.
After 2 hours, the Mamluks call off their attack and retreat.
So we decided to call off the wedding at the last minute.
How are you doing with these phrasal verbs so far? Our next phrasal verb, to catch up on. I spent the whole day catching up on emails. Do you know what this means? To catch up on, this means to do something that you haven't been able to do recently. For example, I need to catch up on your lessons. Maybe you say that to me or to your teacher or your piano instructor. This means you haven't been able to review the lessons recently, so now you have many lessons to review and you need to catch up on them. You need to watch all the lessons you haven't reviewed. Or you could say, this weekend, I caught up on my chores. I did all the chores I haven't been able to do because I was too busy doing other things, so I put them off. But this weekend, I caught up on them. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Anyone that wants to catch up on that part of the story can go back and watch our original interview, which they should do anyway.
Because it feels like a way to catch up on social media or read something.
Let's have this down paired. Catch up on email, go home at a regular time.
Our next phrasal verb, blurt out. I can't believe I blurted that out in front of my boss. Do you know what this means? To blurt out. This is when you say something suddenly without thinking, often something that shouldn't have been said. For example, let's say you're in a meeting and you're discussing a strategy or a goal and you say, there's no way we'll pull that off. There's no way we'll be successful. And then later in the meeting, you can say, oh, why did I blurt that out? I have such a big mouth. So this is an expression, to have a big mouth. Someone who has a big mouth often says things they shouldn't say because they don't think before they speak. So people with big mouths often blurt things out. Or maybe your coworker is looking for a new job, but it was a secret. But then you say to your coworker, I accidentally blurted out that you're looking for a new job. So you said it suddenly without thinking. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Further, when girls blurt out answers without raising their hands.
One of you, so what's your story? Can you just blurt out a 30-second story?
His first reflex was not to blurt out what was going on.
Next, comb through. Do you have time to comb through this report? Do you know what this means? To comb through. And notice that B is silent. Comb. Comb through. This means to analyze or review something carefully and completely. Before you submit your CV, you should comb through it to make sure there are no errors. That's always good advice. Or, I combed through this entire textbook to prepare for my IELTS. You reviewed it entirely and completely. She spent the whole afternoon combing through old family photos to create a scrapbook. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Help NASA kind of comb through our data.
So I went back to my staff, let's comb through this.
Go comb through their website.
Next, skim through. I only had enough time to skim through the report. Do you know what this means? To skim through. This means to review something quickly without going into detail. So you can think of it as the opposite of comb through. For example, the consultant has an impressive background, but I only skimmed through his proposal. I didn't read it fully. She skimmed through the recipe to make sure she had all the ingredients. So she looked at it quickly, not fully. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Can't sort of skim through it.
And I'm just going to skim through, hit a couple of the highlights.
Read the class syllabus, skim through textbooks, and review all the materials.
Next, gloss over. The consultant glossed over the budget increase. Do you know what this means? To gloss over, this means to briefly mention something without going into detail. And you do this often to avoid discussing it thoroughly. For example, the manager glossed over the consultant's rude comment. So how could he gloss over this rude comment? Maybe he's in the middle of a meeting and he says to the consultant, who remember said something rude, he says to him, I appreciate your perspective. Anyway, let's review the upcoming conference. So he mentioned it briefly, but then he quickly moved on to something else because he didn't want to spend time reviewing that negative comment. How about this one? My brother always glosses over why his girlfriend doesn't come to family gatherings. He mentions it quickly, but then moves on to a different topic on purpose because he doesn't want to discuss it. He glosses over it. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Love this stuff, so I didn't want to gloss over anything.
In the early days, I would gloss over my family's experience.
I'll have to gloss over or omit many formal details.
Next, pan out. The speaker we wanted didn't pan out. Do you know what this means? To pan out, this means to have a successful outcome. The strategy didn't pan out. This means the strategy wasn't successful, didn't have a successful outcome. So we need to revise our approach. Or you could say to your spouse or roommate or family member, let's see how our kitchen reno pans out before we start the bathroom. Reno is short for renovation, so you're renovating your kitchen. Let's see how it pans out. Let's see how successful it is before we start another renovation. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Another reason why this learning styles theory doesn't pan out.
And in that way, in case there were any failures, in case things didn't pan out.
We're excited to see how the metrics of those pan out.
Our next phrasal verb, drift off. I think I drifted off during the presentation. Do you know what this means? To drift off. This means to gradually become less focused or to fall asleep unintentionally, not on purpose, often while engaged in another activity. Here's a real example. Sometimes I drift off when my husband starts talking about his work. Now in this case, I don't fall asleep, but I gradually stop paying attention to my husband and I start just paying attention to other things. We have another expression, my mind wanders. I drift off because my husband's work is very technical and often I don't really understand what he's saying. So I drift off. You could also say, I must have drifted off during the movie. Now, this could mean that you stopped paying attention to the movie and you started paying attention to other things, or quite likely you fell asleep during the movie and you didn't even realize that it ended. And hours later, you're asleep on your couch and the movie is over and you had no idea. You drifted off. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Listening to the sound of the ocean as you slowly drift off to sleep.
It might feel nice for a while to drift off into past memories.
Eventually, Henry began to drift off for the last time.
Next, dip into. We had to dip into our emergency fund to make payroll. Do you understand this one? To dip into, this means to spend a portion of a reserve or saving, often temporarily. So you have this reserve or saving, and if you dip into it, you take a portion, some of that money out. So this is used specifically with spending money. For example, the company had to dip into its emergency fund, so take a portion of that fund to cover the unexpected expenses. Or we had to dip into our savings to cover the cost of the car repair. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
The House had initially proposed a $2,700 payout, but couldn't muster the votes required to dip into savings to pay for it.
But there are other proposals to dip into it, one for a school loan construction fund.
And therefore, I don't need to dip into my savings.
Our next phrasal verb, pick up. I pick up a lot of English expressions by watching TV. Do you know what this means? In this context, pick up means to learn something informally or casually, often through exposure rather than instruction. So right now, you're not picking up these phrasal verbs. I'm teaching them to you. This is formal instruction. But if you're watching a TV show and you hear the speaker say a phrasal verb in speech and you learn the meaning of that phrasal verb from that TV show, you just picked up that phrasal verb, which is a great way to learn. Or maybe you have a great skill, you know how to code, and someone asks you, did you take coding classes? And you say, no, I just picked it up over the years. So you were exposed to coding and you just learned it gradually from being exposed to it. You didn't take formal classes or have formal instruction. Let's listen to some real-world examples.
Turning to LinkedIn Learning more than ever to pick up new skills.
Find people with similar hobbies and pick up new interests.
It's not uncommon for humans to pick up new accents.
How about this phrasal verb? Shake off. If you make a mistake, just shake it off. Do you know this one? If you're a Taylor Swift fan, you probably do. Shake off. This means to get rid of something such as a problem or mistake and move on from it. So you can imagine the problem is right here and you just shake it off, shake it off. This is commonly used in sports. The coach might say to the team, we're down 3 points, which means we're losing by 3 points. We're down 3 points. We need to shake it off and play better than ever. So this means not let the fact that we're losing affect us. We need to forget about it and play better than ever. Or you could say, I know I made a few grammar mistakes during my spoken exam, but I just shook them off and I passed, which is a great reminder that you can make mistakes and still pull it off, still be successful.
And they shake off criticism with a flip of the wig.
So my challenge is that we share and we shake off those narratives.
It had developed a reputation as the king of knockoffs, and it couldn't shake the reputation of being a copycat.
So how did you do with those phrasal verbs? Share your score in the comments. And now Wes is going to teach you 50 different collocations to help you speak more easily and naturally.
I am going to teach you 50 different collocations. And if you don't know what a collocation is, it is a word or phrase that is often followed by another word or phrase. And there are many different types of collocations, but in today's lesson, I want to teach you 50 different adjective noun collocations. So all of these phrases are adjectives that are commonly followed by different nouns. So let's begin with our first collocation using the adjective high. And you might hear people talk about high school. This is a time period in a person's education. You have middle school, high school, and then university. Or maybe somebody's talking about high ground, in which case you need to get to a higher or elevated position. Maybe there's a flood and somebody says, we need to get to high ground. Or high tech. This just means advanced technology. And you could say, wow, this stuff, it's really high tech. The technology is advanced. Or somebody could have high standards. And that means that they just want the best for themselves. And you could say, well, I have really high standards when it comes to food, or when it comes to places to stay, hotels. You have high standards. Or a high degree of certainty. This means that you believe and you know that something is going to happen. Next, we have collocations with the adjective big. And we use this to really emphasize the noun that it's describing. For example, there could be a big mistake, and you're really trying to say that, wow, okay, this is a real problem and somebody made a big mistake. Or maybe there is a big surprise. It's not your normal surprise, it's a big surprise. You could also say something is a big deal. This emphasizes that this thing is very important, and you could say it's a big deal. A person may also need to make a big decision. This is talking about a very important decision, and you will often hear somebody say, look, I really have a big decision to make. It's very important. It's a big decision. And finally, you could hear somebody say big money, which means you're talking about a lot of money that may be coming your way, big money. Next adjective that I have for you is little. And you would hear this used with a variety of nouns such as little boy or little girl. This is just describing somebody's age perhaps, but you got to be careful. It may not be polite sometimes to call somebody a little boy or a little girl. You could also say little thought. In this case, somebody might say that, well, you gave this little thought. You really didn't think about it much. Or perhaps a little bit. This is talking about an amount. There is a little bit. Or little time. If you don't have a lot of time to do something, you could say, well, we have very little time. We need to get moving because we have little time. Then we have the adjective heavy. And you could say, well, somebody is a heavy drinker or a heavy smoker. It means that they do this a lot. Or maybe there is heavy traffic. If there are many cars on the road, you could describe that and say, wow, there's really heavy traffic today. Or perhaps there's heavy rain. And it means that it's raining a lot. If it's raining, if it's really coming down, you could describe it and say there's heavy rain. If you're out driving in the heavy rain, and there's heavy traffic, it's likely there will be a traffic jam. You could finally say that someone is a heavy sleeper. And this means that, well, once they go to sleep, you can make all the noise that you want because you are not going to wake this person up. They are a heavy sleeper. Now, because we just talked about heavy, then I think it's only appropriate that our next adjective is light. And we can use this to say the opposite of many of those that I just talked about. So instead of somebody being a heavy drinker or a heavy smoker, you could say that someone is a light drinker or a light smoker. You could say that someone is a light sleeper, in which case any kind of noise would probably wake this person up. They're not a heavy sleeper, they are a light sleeper. I think I am more of a light sleeper. I wake up pretty easily at night if there is any kind of noise. So when I go to bed, I just want silence. You could also say light rain. If it's not raining that much outside, perhaps it's just starting to rain. It's not heavy rain, it's just a little light rain. You don't need your umbrella just yet because it's only a little light rain. If talking about wind, you could say that, well, there is a light breeze, that it's not, well, it's not very windy. It's just, well, there's a light breeze, which I think is kind of nice when you walk outside and there's a light breeze. And finally, you could say there is a light shade. And in this case, you're pretty much talking about a color, a light shade of red, or a light shade of blue, or a light shade of green, a light shade of some color. Then we have the adjective strong, which I think is a great adjective, and you can use this to describe many nouns. For example, you could say a strong argument. If you are debating with someone, you want to make sure that you are presenting a strong argument. You could also have a strong feeling about something, or maybe something you want, a strong desire. If talking about, well, the wind instead of a light breeze, you could say there is a strong breeze or even a strong wind. We can also use it with the word evidence and say that there is strong evidence. Police, when they're trying to solve a crime, they're looking for strong evidence. You could also say that someone has a strong hand. And in this case, they're not really talking about your hands. You could be talking about cards. If you're playing cards, you have a hand of cards, and you could say you have a strong hand, but it could also be referring to somebody's position, that you have a position of power, and you could refer to that and say, well, right now I have a very strong hand. I'm in a very good position, a position of power. I have a strong hand. Another common way this adjective is used is when talking about a strong relationship. And this just means that, well, you could use it to talk about maybe a family member or your friends or even a romantic relationship, husband and wife, and you say, okay, we just have a strong relationship. We believe in each other. We trust each other. We have a strong relationship. I think that you and I, we have a strong relationship because you watch our video lessons, you write to me in the comments, which I love hearing from you. And because of that, I can say that we have a strong relationship, you and I. At least I hope we do. All right. The next adjective is deep. And we can use this with nouns such as deep thought, that you are really thinking about something, and you would say that somebody, they're in deep thought. They're really focused, and they're really trying to think about some serious topic. Or maybe somebody, you could describe a person and say that they have a deep voice, describing the way that they talk. So, for example, this is my deep voice, and it's really bad. That's a very terrible example, but you kind of get the idea. If you want to describe the way somebody sounds, their voice, you could say they have a deep voice. It's down here in the chest. You could also use it with sleep and say that somebody is in a deep sleep. Even if somebody is not a heavy sleeper, but they're so tired, they're just in a deep sleep. You could also say that somebody takes a deep breath. Or maybe you could describe a person and say that they are in a deep depression. They're very sad. It is a very intense depression. It is a deep depression. Another way you could use this adjective is deep down. And often I think somebody would say deep down inside, talking about a feeling that's deep down inside. Then we have the adjective fast, and you could say that, well, somebody gets off to a fast start. They begin, but they do so quickly, and they get a fast start. You could also describe a person and say that, well, he or she is a fast talker. You could, let's continue describing people, and you could say that someone is fast asleep. If this person is sleeping, you can use this expression and say, well, they're fast asleep. They're sleeping soundly. They're fast asleep. You may also hear somebody talk about a fast pace, that you need to move kind of quickly and continuously, and you might need to keep a fast pace. Another very common collocation would be fast food. I think all of us are familiar with different fast food restaurants. And I could also say that someone, perhaps I could say that you are a fast learner, that you watch these video lessons and you are building your vocabulary because you are a fast learner. You learn quickly. And quick is the next adjective that I want to talk about because it's a little similar to fast, but we use it with different nouns. For example, we could use it with the word glance and say quick glance to really describe something that that you saw for just a very, very short period of time, and you just got a quick glance. You looked at it, and then and that's it. That's it. That's a quick glance right there. You could also say that you're going to get a quick bite, in which case you're talking about you're going to eat. You're going to get something to eat very quickly. You're just going to grab a quick bite to eat. Or maybe you want to get a quick shower. You're telling somebody that, well, you need to shower. You're not going to spend a long time in there. You're just going to get a quick shower. And during a presentation, somebody might give you a quick recap. They're going to review whatever they just said, and they're going to do it quickly. They're going to give you a quick recap. Or perhaps a person might need to make a quick decision. When you really have to think fast, you don't have a lot of time, you need to make a quick decision. Now let's move, more to the opposite meaning and talk about the adjective slow. And we can use it with nouns such as, growth or progress. I think quite often you would hear it used with these nouns when talking about perhaps the work that somebody's doing, or you might say, we're making slow progress. We're not going very fast. We didn't get off to a fast start, and right now we're just making slow progress. And because of that, the company, the business is experiencing slow growth. I'm sure many of you have heard it with the word motion and talking about slow motion to describe the way, somebody is moving or something that you're watching, that things were moving in slow motion. I'm just going to move on to the next collocation and talk about a slow day. And if somebody says that, it's a slow day, it just means it's not very busy. I often think people would use this collocation when talking about work, that they're not very busy at their job, and they say, today it was a slow day. And you could also use it to describe a person and say that someone is a slow learner, that they're not a fast learner. It takes them a little more time to understand and comprehend different things. You could say, they're a slow learner. I think sometimes with many things, I am a bit of a slow learner. I really like to take my time, and quite often I need to review things and do it numerous times before I understand. So I could say, I'm a slow learner, but that's okay. I don't expect you to watch this lesson and remember every single one of these collocations for the rest of your life. It's all about getting exposure reading, listening, and then practicing, because that is the best way to build your vocabulary and remember these phrases. And that's what I want to do right now. I want to practice using some of these collocations. I'm going to give you a sentence and the adjective is missing. The first sentence that I have for you is, I need you to make a decision. I need you to make a decision. Which adjective are you going to use? I hope you said, I need you to make a quick decision. When you have to think fast, you need to make a quick decision. The next one is, even though our neighbor threw a party, I didn't wake up because I am a sleeper. Even though our neighbor had a party, I didn't wake up because I am a sleeper. In this case, I hope that you said heavy, a heavy sleeper. You can just sleep through anything, including your neighbor's party. Then we have, I'm going to Vegas and I hope to win some money this weekend. I'm going to Vegas and I hope to win some money this weekend. If you're going to Vegas and you're going to gamble, of course you want to win some big money. I'm going to Vegas and I hope to win some big money this weekend. The next sentence is, scientists believe that the climate will continue to change with a degree of certainty. I think you should remember this one. Scientists believe that climate will continue to change with a degree of certainty. I hope that you said high. We're talking about a high degree of certainty that somebody, they're pretty sure that this is going to happen. And finally, I would tell you the sentence and I would say, I think you are a learner. And I really do. I think you are a learner. And of course, you should have said fast, all right? I don't think you're a slow learner. I think you are a fast learner. And I think if you continue to read, if you continue to listen, if you continue to watch these video lessons, that is going to help you build your vocabulary. It's going to help you remember these different collocations, and that is then going to help you improve your overall English fluency. Great job. I hope that you learned some new phrases that you can now go out and use the next time you're having a conversation. And I would like to give a special thanks to Jennifer for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was truly my pleasure. And subscribe to my channel to enjoy more lessons to help you become fluent and to watch another special masterclass that Wes and I have prepared just for you.